What's up, guys? I'm Tim. This is New Craft Workshop, and it is time for another DIY friendly weekend project. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us, let me tell you real quick what we do here.
So tell us, please.
Every week we post a DIY friendly build where it's something that you should be able to knock out in an hour out in your shop. But what we do is we give you the basic structure of that project. We give you a foundation, and then we ask you to get out in your shop and make it your own. When you do, then you're going to head over and join our Facebook group, and you're going to post your version in the Facebook group. That way everybody can see your take on my idea. And I'm not going to lie, a lot of these aren't my original ideas. I do a lot of searching on the internet, and I find some things, and then I tweak it, and guess what? I make it my own. Ask you guys to do the same. So today we're making this really cool hanging picture frame. It's going to be made from some 1x2 material, some 1x4 material, and a couple of wooden dowels, and that's it. So you ready to build this thing? Because I'm ready to show you how to do it. So let's go. All right, as always on this channel, we give you a cut list. We give you a tool list that is going to help you have everything ahead of time that you need laid out for you. Follow my instructions and you can make this really cool picture frame. So let's start with our cut list. Our base is a 1x4, and we're going to cut that to 19 inches long. And then we have an arm that comes up. This arm is going to be mitered on the corners. So anytime I give you dimensions for pieces that are mitered, if we have our two opposing miters to make like our frame, I'm giving you the dimensions of the long end. Now, when we do our frame today, I'm going to lay this out for you and show you exactly how I came up with these dimensions to hold this glass in place. And then you'll be able to take that method and scale it up or down to an 8x10, 4x6, whatever you choose to do. So for our particular arm, we have two pieces mitered, 15 inches long from the square end to the long end of our miter. And then for our frame, we're going to have two pieces of 1x2, 11 inches to the long end, two pieces of 1x2, 9 inches to the long end. Trust the cut list, except for last video. For the first time since I started my channel, I said the right thing and then I put the wrong thing in the freaking cut list. The little church we made in our last holiday video, the side pieces should have been 10 inches. I said 10 inches and I put 6 in the cut list. I don't know why. Always trust the cut list, even though I screwed up once. Trust this. Okay, that's all you need for your cut list. Oh, and 2 wooden dowels that you're going to cut to length if you choose to do this method based on where you want your frame to seat. You'll see that later. So cut list is done. Boom. Tool list. This one's going to be pretty easy. We're going to need a saw to cut everything to length, and you're going to need a way to cut your miters. If you have a power miter saw or a table saw, awesome. That's the best way to do it because we want our joints nice and tight on our picture frame. If you were doing this by hand, you can use a handheld miter box. Just take your time. Make sure those cuts are nice and precise. You're going to need a drill and a drill bit that is the same diameter as your wooden dowels. You're going to need a countersink bit because we are going to drive a couple of screws up through our base into our arm that holds this frame. We want it nice and stable. You're going to need some wood glue. You're going to need some clamps probably to hold things together until they dry. You're going to need some painter's tape, and you'll see why in a little bit. Painter's tape is extremely handy out in your shop. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's it. Again, when I edit, if something else pops up, but I think that's it. I mean, if you want to make this your own and sand it and router the edges and all that, that's on you when you make it your own. But that's the basics that we need for today's build. So let's get after it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 1x2 pieces, and look, I've already cut mine just to some random lengths because I'm actually using scraps from around my shop. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take 4 of our 1x2s. We're going to cut our 45-degree angle on one end only. We're going to cut that on there because then I can show you how we're going to measure for our proper length cut for our opposing miter on the other side. Hopefully that made sense. All right, we're going to stay right here at the table saw because this will be fairly quick the way I'm going to show you how this works, and then we can cut our opposing 45-degree angles on the other side. So let me grab this piece of glass because it needs to be over here. And I am going to, safety first, I'm going to lower this blade, even though I know my saw is off and we are safe. So we have a 5x7 sheet of glass. We do not want this miter and our opposing miter to be 5 inches exactly like this, because then our glass doesn't have anything to hold on to. Hopefully when this all comes together, this will make a little bit more sense. So we need an overlap in each of these corners of about 1/4 of an inch. And hopefully this is showing up on camera. I know it's not easy to understand, but hopefully if you're like me, you can see this and see exactly what I'm talking about. So if we overlap our glass about 1/4 of an inch on both of these sides, then we know that we need to come in here about 1/4 of an inch to make our mark for our opposing 45. So let me grab my pencil, because if you've watched my channel before, you know that I always have my pencil super available and ready to go. That's BS. I'll be right back. Look what I found. Okay, so let's look at this. We have our overhang for our glass. Now I'm going to show you 2 ways to mount this glass to our frame. But if you'll notice that this particular board, this miter is 1/4 of an inch in from the glass. So when we mark this board, we also need to come in 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the glass. So if we come in about 1/4 of an inch, this right here is where our miter is going to be cut. And we're going to remove this material. Same thing on the long end, which in our case is a 7-inch piece of glass. We're going to just come over here and mark the edge of the glass, but then we're going to come in about 1/4 of an inch. And then again, this is where this is going to remove this material over here. Now we have our links. We can cut our opposing side. And whether you're using a table saw, miter saw, hand saw, whatever you might be doing, if you can cut both of your angles for your 5-inch side and your 7-inch side at the same time, you're going to wind up with a more precise and square frame in the end. I have a gauge here on my table saw, which is going to allow me to make extremely repetitive cuts to the same exact length. But if you're using your miter saw, chop saw, whatever you call it, pop these together with a little double-sided tape or something. Cut these at the same time. As long as our top and bottom are exactly the same length and our 2 sides are exactly the same length, our frame should come together fairly square without a lot of adjustments. So let's cut these opposing angles. All right, these 4 are cut. Let's head back over to the workbench and we will start the assembly process on our frame. Let's go. All right, we're back from the saw. We have our 4 pieces cut, and as you can see, they're going to go together just like this. We're just making a simple frame out of some miter cuts. And we need to now talk about how we're going to get our glass mounted on our frame. Now, there are a couple of options, and I'm going to adjust this camera so you guys can see. Now, we can take our glass, and because we cut ours a little bit short, our glass now can seat flush on the back of our frame. If you do not have access to a router or a table saw in order to cut a rabbet for your glass to recess into, this is going to be the easiest way for you to do this. Once we get our frame assembled, we're going to take our glass, we're going to just lay it flat on the back, and we're going to use some mirror clips. I'll pop up a picture of what a mirror clip looks like if you have a mirror in your bathroom at your home that is not trimmed out with some millwork or some wood or something. It's probably held in place with some mirror clips. The plastic ones at the top are multi-leveled, and they are designed to hold glass in place. And that's how we're going to get our glass to stay in place if we do not have access to a router or a table saw. I'm actually going to run mine over the router real quick and cut a rabbet in this. I'm not going to film that because if you don't have a rabbet, If you don't have a router with a rabbiting bit, then you're probably not going to do that anyway. But I'm going to run over and cut a rabbet in mine. But if you don't, just use these mirror clips because they will absolutely hold this thing in place. Once I get those cut, we'll come back over here and I'll show you how we're going to glue this up, because gluing miters can sometimes be a challenge if you don't have the right clamps, but there's an easy way to get around that. So I'll be right back. All right, we're back and I have my dado cut in. And as you can see, we've got our glass sitting in this recessed area that we cut out with our rabbiting bit over at the router table. So again, if you don't, we're going to use mirror clips to hold our glass in place, but if you have access to it, this is the way to go, because then your glass is going to be nice and seated in the back and look a little bit more professional. So gluing this thing up, gluing up a square of any kind with 4 miter cuts can sometimes be challenging if you are relying strictly on like some trigger clamps or stuff like that you might have out in your shop. But today we're going to do a really simple method. I'm sure you've seen it. I did not come up with this. I did not originate this, but I'm just going to show you how this works and comes together. So I'm going to clear out a little bit of room because we do want this laid out all the way across our workbench just like this, and we want to make sure that we've got this facing the correct way if we've cut rabbets in the back. Now, somewhere around here, because I never lose anything in my shop, I've got some painter's tape. Hang on. Yes, that took me a while, because if you've been watching my channel at all, you know we moved. My shop is still kind of under construction, but I'm getting there. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay out our material on our painter's tape. And the most important thing when we're laying this out is to make sure that our end pieces are nice and squared up with each other. And we want to make sure also that you're rotating short, long, or else you're going to have a picture frame that is not the same length on either of your two sides. So now that we have this laid out, we're going to leave a little excess tape on this end so that when this comes together, we can make sure that it's nice and secure. So all we're going to do is spread our glue in our two joints. And as always on Newcraft Workshop, we're going to use this special glue spreader that is the best glue spreader known to man. And we're going to cover both sides of our joint, make sure that the glue is covering all of our sides. Now, don't be afraid to go a little bit heavy on your glue, because end grain will soak up a lot of glue, and it's better to clean up your squeeze out than it is to not have enough glue and have your joints separate. Now we can take our frame and simply roll it up, and when these two ends come together, we should have a really nice squared off frame that we can tape and hold in place. Now I'm going to clean up this squeeze out, and I'm going to let this dry. Once this is dry, we can get on to assembling this whole frame. So editing, it'll be quick, I promise. All right, now that our frame is glued up and it is drying, we need to get our arm assembled, and for this we're also going to need a 45-degree cut in either end of this. Now, if you don't want this to be mitered because you were struggling getting that frame together and you don't want to wait too long for your glue to set up, feel free to do a butt joint. Glue this together, drive you a screw through one end, and that screw will act as your clamp holding that butt joint together, and this will be just as strong once the glue dries. I'm going to miter these just because I want it to kind of have a universal look, but let's cut 45s on either end, and then we'll cut these to length. Once these pieces are cut, we are ready to get everything assembled. Back in a second. All right, so we're back, and we have our arm is 15 inches across on the horizontal, and our base is 19, which means I've allotted for 2 inches of overhang on either side. Our base, we always want a little bit wider, more for aesthetics than anything else. So we're going to take a scrap piece of our cutoff. We're going to come in 2 inches from one end and put a mark. And that mark right there is where the edge of this piece is going to go. Hopefully that makes sense. And we are going to line this up center to center as best we can. If you want to get out your tape measure and measure this and make sure it's exactly in the center, feel free. I am going to simply draw a little box, and right in this area is where I'm going to want to pre-drill and countersink 2 holes. Then we can flip this over, countersink from the bottom, and drive up a couple of screws that are going to hold this thing in place. So I'm going to just start by putting a sacrificial board underneath so I don't chew up my workbench. We're going to just drill a hole through. And I've made a decision that this is the top of my board. This has a little bit of, I don't know, a couple rough spots on the bottom. There's a little chip and stuff. So this is my top. So I just want to flip it over and make sure that my countersink is done on the bottom side of this. All right, we have our countersinks done. We are going to pop a little glue on the bottom of our board. And remember, a little heavy on the glue is fine on end grain. That end grain is going to soak it up a little bit. And we have our wet rag to clean up anyway. So it's better to clean up your squeeze out than to not have enough glue. As we did in our last project, we're going to take our screws. We're going to start them just until the tip of the screw comes up from the other side. Just the slightest bit. Hopefully you can see that on this camera over here. We just want those to stick out just slightly. Then we can take our board, line it up where our marks were, push on it a little bit, and that's going to hold that thing in place and show us exactly where we need to drive our screws. And now our frame is done. All right, now that we have our arm of our frame assembled and our frame assembled, our arm of our base and our frame, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of come in here. We're going to put a couple of marks, and this is going to be where we're going to drill for our dowels. Now, I just kind of want to see where I'm at. I want to make sure that I have the same amount of overhang here and here. So like we do with everything else on Newcraft Workshop, we're going to eyeball that. And then we're just going to put a little mark here and a little mark here. Now it's time to drill, but we're not going to drill on the face, of course. We're going to drill on our edge. So we just need to carry this line down. So we mark these out, and then we'll drill some holes. I am using this dowel. I'm not going to tell you what size it is because I don't know. I think just by looking at it, it's probably 3/8. But I'm not telling you what size it is because you might not have 3/8. You might have a 1/4 inch, or you might have 1/2 inch. As long as it doesn't, as long as it's not thicker than this material right here, you're going to be fine. I just happen to have this handy, so I'm going to grab a bit that is the same size diameter as this dowel. We're going to drill a hole here. We're going to drill a hole here, and then we're going to drill our matching holes up in the arm. Then we can get this thing assembled. And I am using a Forstner bit to drill my holes. And one of the reasons I like to use a Forstner bit is because, as you can see on the tip of almost all Forstner bits, there's a color variation between the cutting portion of the bit and where they grind this down right here. That right there gives me a really good indicator, and I can stop right here at this mark. That's going to assure all 4 of my holes are the same depth. You can also use a standard drill bit. Just put your piece of tape around it. You want all 4 of these holes to be the exact same depth so that when we put our dowels in there and we push these 2 components together, your picture frame is not sitting crooked because one of your dowels is in a deeper or shallower hole than the other side. So make sure all 4 of these holes are drilled to the same depth, and then we can get this thing assembled. All right, we have our holes drilled. We have everything ready to go. All we have left to do is we just need to cut our dowel. And to get the length of the dowel that you're cutting, just kind of eyeball where you want your particular frame hanging from your frame of your frame. I just kind of want to do like I have with almost everything and just kind of center this in here. I'm going to take a measurement between this, which is 2 1/4. I'm going to add 1/2 inch to that because I drilled a 1/4 inch depth in the top and the bottom. So those 2 1/4 inches together is 1/2 inch, plus the 2 1/2 here, plus the 2 1/4 here. 2 1/4 plus 1/2 is quick. If you said 2 3/4, you're right. If you said anything else, you're wrong. Let me cut these dowels real quick. We'll get these glued in and we're done. All that is left is some glue on our dowels. And we're going to pop these in these holes right here. And because there's no other fastener holding this in place besides the glue, I would recommend clamping this together prior to actually using this thing. We need our glue to set up nice and tight, and the only way to really get that to happen is to clamp this together. So let me grab a couple clamps back here, and we will clamp this. Minus the clamps, your project is done. I am going to let this rest for quite a while because this glue needs to really set up. But that's it. We have our frame hanging from our frame. Dress this up. As always, I want you guys to make this your own. This is just a simple blueprint. You can hang this frame from the arm any countless ways. We could do eye hooks in here. We could do a little chain. You could do some rope. Whatever you feel like doing to dress this up. Change the base up, chamfer the edges, round them over, rough this thing up, make it look old and distressed. Use thicker material for your framing. Use smaller dimensions than I used and make it a little bit tighter of a fit. Change the size of the picture frame, etc. You see what I'm saying? This is a blueprint for you to get out in your shop and make it your own. I am going to lay this down over here and let all this glue dry, and I'll be right back. All right, that is it. Another DIY friendly project in the books. This is a cool little picture frame that is completely scalable. You can make it bigger to hold an 8x10. You can make it smaller to hold a 4x6 or a 3x5. You can make it wider if you want to hold like a collage. You can totally change this up and make it your own. Down below the video, there's a few things. You're going to find in the description a link to our Facebook group page. I would love it if you would click and join our Facebook group. Thumbs up button is down there. It looks like this, doesn't look like this. There's also a button called subscribe. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel. Twice a week, we're pumping out content that is DIY, weekend project style material, helping those people that are looking to get into a new hobby or maybe even a new trade, don't know anything about woodworking. We're offering a ton of super simple content, super simple projects that you guys can get out and build and even involve the kids and grandkids if you want to. Last but not least, down below this video, in the description, you're going to find links to all of the items that we used in today's project, as well as all of our tools. Every time you click on those links and you do your normal shopping over at Amazon, it helps benefit New Craft Workshop. And for each and every one of you guys who do that on a regular basis, we could not be more thankful. So that's all I got for you today. I'll catch you guys Wednesday when we do our holiday builds. I got a couple more projects coming for the holidays, the Christmas season, and that's all I got for you today. So as always, I'll catch you on YouTube.